Welcome back, Africa fans. Today I have a special guest, a new friend I met here in Lusaka, Zambia. Her name is Ina Curic, and she is a peace builder, a world traveler. She's originally from Romania, and sadly she's leaving in a couple of days, so I wanted to have this opportunity to sit down with her and have her tell us about her experience, not only about her own background in peace building in other African countries outside of Zambia, but what her experiences have been in those places as well as Zambia. So welcome, Ina. Thank you for agreeing to be on my small YouTube channel. I love talking to experienced people and people who are knowledgeable of what's going on in the world. So this is a treat for me. So first of all, let's start off briefly on, tell us about your background.
All right. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about the big picture that I've experienced and the small picture I've been working on. And I do have a heart for Africa. I felt called to come here. Okay, so I trained as a peace and conflict specialist, and I thought this was the biggest picture that I discovered, looking a little bit at the world after doing sociology, and part of what I'd done after I withdrew from the field, I worked in a few post-war countries and African countries as well, but elsewhere, Iraq and Dominican Republic. And what I've done since I withdrew from the field, keeping that heart of passion, is to start a storytelling for peace platform, where I could bring some of the tools and the way of thinking from the peace building thing into the mainstream, starting with education very early on.
And I understand you also wrote a children's book. And
I
you
have
incorporate
6
African characters into your children's book.
Yes, actually, I'm very happy to say that I have a half African family. So I took the professional route, specializing in post-war and development and conflict, and my sister took the personal route. So she's married a Zambian from the Lozi tribe, so we have 4 chocolate babies in the family. And I wrote a false autobiography story that brings the permaculture logic. This is like peace building from the ground up, how to really make peace and develop an ecosystemic thinking from kindergarten on. And then that story has the characters that are coming from this traditional Eastern European village, but have African cousins. So in this vision of what would a food forest, an abundant food forest look like, and the landscape that we're working on in cooperation with the earth, with all the other beings in the ecosystem, and we're growing something beautiful, then this vision is shared with the African cousins, which is actually a real story. Last time I was in Zambia, I spent a lot of time going to local schools and doing storytelling circles with children. So we went into the garden and picked, this flower is edible, and this is medicinal and also edible, and you can taste this and that. And that's when you start very early on. I've met some of the kids that I met 3 years ago now. They didn't remember me because they were very young, but they remembered, tasting the plants. So I think I'm passionate of bringing this to a very experiential level. So, yes.
And Africa is a perfect place to teach all those various things of nature and medicinal things and edible things and plants and all those things. Tell us a little bit about your country of Romania and generally its experience with Africa. Or is it only limited to travelers like you who venture out and see places for work like Burundi and you said the Congo and Zambia and so forth? I know that you guys are a part of Europe, clearly Eastern European country, you're part of NATO, but how many of people in Romania actually travel to Africa? Do they know, what's the educational system about Africa in Romania?
All right. Well, we do have agreements, and before, when we had the communist dictatorship, actually there were good relationships with many African countries at that level, and there were many African students coming to study in Romania. So my first African country was Burundi in 2007, and I met there a Burundian community of people that had all studied medicine in Romania and engineering in the 70s and 80s. So there were relationships back then. And now the awareness is growing. I've seen more people just wanting to travel the world and come to Africa.
Yeah.
What I've noticed, and when I came to my first African country as a professional, I felt really glad in a way to come from an Eastern European background. Because anybody with a Muzungu skin in Africa, if you're a little bit sensitive and opening the heart to really the history
for
of
the people that
place.
don't know what that means, Muzungu skin is Caucasian.
Yes, exactly.
term
It
used here in
seems
Zambia.
Caucasian, so then
Yeah.
you're immediately placed in a group that has had a very painful historical history with
Yeah.
everything in Africa. So I felt as a European from the eastern part, just having gone through a dictatorship, a totalitarian regime that took 45 years, that I was in a position sort of in between the West and the South. It was sort of, and I still think being in the middle, the potential of countries like that can have an access to both realities and help us a little bit to get out of this polarized east-west thinking or even north-south thinking. So I challenge a lot that in my professional practice.
Fantastic. Well, help us understand, and me briefly, I know we've had other conversations before too, what are the major differences between Western Europe and Eastern Europe?
So just to say, Burundi, just to give an example, in 2007 I was there after Romania was just barely coming up after a very, very difficult economic transition. I could really identify all the struggles the Burundian people were going through. I could really connect with them from a human level, understanding the processes much better than had I just come from a Western European country or just the global north in a way, which is very spoiled economically, right? So then I thought, first came in as a volunteer. I said, I'm just gonna go on my own money. I was still a master's student. I'm finishing my master's degree. And then I felt really close to the people. I could establish a connection. I could feel, wow, I understand. We've been through this. We had to, this metaphor, we had to get the belt shorter and tighten. I could understand this very difficult economic transition. What is difficult, is that once you seem to be a Muzungu, you're a white person, also here, it's very difficult to establish a genuine, and this is still at the heart of my interest, a genuine human connection with other people in Africa, to develop friendship, trust, to look critically and politically at where do we come from, what are our historical roots, what did my ancestors did to your ancestors.
You mean from your perspective or from the African people's perspective, or both?
Both, because when we have a meeting ground is when we meet again. We meet in a very distorted, we cannot meet as human beings, we're all people. We actually come from this background which was politically and historically corrupted and distorted. So I think it's all the more, it was very painful for me to work in Africa, to see these huge gaps between white and black, poor and rich. You have starving, malnutrition children in the streets, and with these huge castles of the people who got in power, or extremely big gap between the wages. It was the price of a local wage for one-day worker was the price of a beer. Back then. So this was very difficult for me to take in. And I think all the more I admire my sister for taking the personal route, for choosing and the destiny, like to marry an African, to come here and to have 4 babies and to really, because sometimes I was thinking, maybe the post-colonialist era, maybe all the Muzungus and the white people should get out of Africa, not interfere into politics anymore, give the people of Africa back the dignity of solving their own issues. But it's such a complex political environment we have in the world, and then there's all this mixing. I think all the mixed families do peace work at a very basic level. And because we can't go back and right the wrongs that simply, just get all the people back, get all the land back. This work of love that everyone does in their family and that we can critically and constructively bring into education, I chose storybooks, that we can bring them into politics, is making again these connections between people, getting us back to what people really know in their hearts. We are one human race, we are all brothers and sisters, but how can we have that obvious from education level to political level to interaction level. I think all of us are responsible in a way. So I come back to Africa in a way, into Zambia, because I have family here. But all of this like vision and the professional grounding and background I have, it's kind of giving me always this zest inside of what can we do, really? Because it's not just to go back into the activist mindset. It's just by simply being, by the choices we make, by the foods we buy, by the books we read. We make consumer choices all the time. So back to my storytelling platform, I thought, you know, I've got 6 books that all bring this wider logic of peace building from within to nature to interpersonal relationships, and I'm trying to market them to the spoiled English language of books, which is a huge ocean. They have too much of everything. When coming here, I saw a real need of expanding this logic into education. So then the activist and the pedagogue in me is like, I would love to come back here. So I think it's a work of planting seeds, I guess, with what I do. Withdrawing from the field, and as a mother, I felt I have a responsibility of teaching my kids in a way that not just about how the world is now, but what's our potential to create another, just a better world, to improve things, to transform things.
I find it very interesting that in the 3 months that you were here, that you chose to put your 2 young, beautiful daughters into a local school so they can assimilate into African culture and still get their education during the time that you're vacationing here with your sister. What are some of their experiences as young children being in Africa and going through the school system here? Have they shared?
Yes, they are going to a Merit Blended Learning Academy, which to me is my ideal school, that besides all the very serious curricula, they also do art and creative thinking. And they have a very mixed, it's mostly Zambians, but also people from other backgrounds, which makes it an international school. So they've come home with lots of reflections. They've been integrated very easily, they're friendly, but you would be surprised how many talks and little snippets of, oh, this is racist, no, you're racist, kids have. I was very surprised. I think we should bring this up to a level of conversation. What do you mean? Just because my skin is different and I'm from this background, how
they experienced some things that made them feel different?
They call each other's names like that, even for small things, which makes me see that they don't understand.
Yeah, because children
they just use
judge by colors and things like that.
No,
so they were experiencing it that way because they're different?
What I noticed is that they just use the words without really knowing what's behind the concept. Because we know we got to this political correctness, how we speak about things.
Oh, you mean the Mzungu word?
Yeah, no, the Mzungu and the black and who's racist and all that. I was surprised to have that come from school, but not on real issues, but more like being thrown around. And I thought, you know what, that should be part of education too.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated, like going to the roots of the words we use, the history, where we come from. So when the kids grow and then start using certain words, they know the history behind, and we're all much more careful.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Now, from your experiences of being visited several African countries for work and for vacation, even like here in Zambia, what are 1 or 2 like key things that really pulled at your heartstrings that you'll never forget?
Oh, you mean like a touching experience?
Yeah, or just like memories that will stay with you. Or are there too many to...
The first time I visited outside of the capital in Burundi, you know, as they say, you don't just go to the capital where you have all this. Sometimes Burundi wasn't like that, but Lusaka is. Like huge developments here. You don't get you have to go in the bush. They say go in the bush. So the first time I went outside of the capital, and actually I was working with a youth peace club there. We went to visit someone's mom. I love the tukuls, all the circular buildings made of mud and painting. So his mother was very old. We traveled outside the capital for a while, and then the tukul was very small, you know, traditionally made. The courtyard was not too big. I was impressed of how clean it was, how she was sweeping the dust everything was in the right order. And just meeting an elder for me,
And they're pretty
I've met
spacious
one
inside,
here.
right? Once you go in, it kind of, they have like allocated sections of rooms, right?
And then, yes, and there is the first time we all ate in a very big plate, where there were little bits of food put, and everyone was just eating. And it reminded me of how we were eating from the same big pot with my sisters when we were children. I thought, what a beautiful tradition, what the Ethiopians also have. The injera is very big, everybody just
eat
chips
together.
in.
Yeah.
So, as my brother-in-law says, the degree of closeness is a bit, tighter in Africa, and it's very beautiful logic to bring into practice with and to share with other cultures as well.
Yeah, I think that type of like sitting together and eating together does create a closeness, and it gathers everyone in the same room when you eat and break bread that way. But it also exists in many other, like Asia and so place. The only place that it really doesn't exist, because there's always go cultures in Europe, right?
In North America.
Yeah, so in Asia and Africa it exists. So
so I guess it's up to us to also challenge this logic of the capitalist efficiency and production and development until we fall off the map, to learn something. See, what I would learn from African spirit is this slowness also. We don't need to rush to get anywhere. The process is also important.
Yeah.
You don't step over dead bodies to achieve your target, and that's a very militaristic language.
Yeah.
We still have a very polarized militaristic thinking in the world, which is why it's important to also bring to the table the larger peace-building conversation.
Peace building is absolutely important. Yeah, not only in politics, socially, educational system. So you mentioned Burundi is, of course, one of the poorest countries in all of Africa, not just the world. But I find it refreshing that you actually still found something that stood out with you, that you appreciated from there. The Congo as well, here in Zambia. Zambia is a part, you have family here. So sometimes when we have conversations in the short period that I've known you, you have like a candle that's been lit on the inside. Like you speak of such, most of the time, of appreciation and love, like almost like you don't want to leave. At least that's what I hear. And I know you're leaving in a couple of days. So does this mean that you would consider moving here, or you could see yourself being in it? You're definitely needed. I mean, people with skill sets and who have the heart and the passion to want to teach through peace-building efforts and education through books and storytelling is very needed. Because it starts with the mindset, right? Socially, it starts with the mindset. And you would be one big piece of the puzzle. And I'm always encouraging people to stay. If you go, come back.
This is touching on something, because the sort of the activist and the pedagogue and like the visionary in me loves the potential of Africa. So when I was 20, I went to brief. I was part of the pedagogical team of the International Scout Center in Switzerland. And I was part of the program team. So I got to work with people and be creative. And I went home and I thought that was the most boring place. I never want to go back to Western Europe, because everything was set. You were just a little piece in a system that was already running. And my creativity is like, I love the context, which my country was back then as well, and still is. And so much Zambia and all other countries where you have such a potential for newness, creativity. You can bring your intelligence and say, I'm going to start something brand new, and nobody thought about this idea, and I'm going to bring this service. So I think this is the potential. So people that are, don't like everything is set, I'm just going to do my job, tick off the list and all that, but want a challenge, then I keep getting also perspectives from here.
To make a change. You see that.
But let me come back to another issue where, because I do have a heart for these sensitive race issues. And if I go into that, it's like I'm going to decompose a little bit and then have to recompose somewhere else. My first book that has African cousins in, which is the true story, and says, okay, the story ends with this little girl has a vision and says this is really the logic of permaculture, which is peace building with the ground up. And meeting with her cousins coming and saying, oh, we want to do something in there. And I'm thinking, who am I as a Muzungu to come teach here, you know? Would that be interpreted as another superior thinking? I'm saying, oh, it's my family, it's my true story. We want to do a forest garden together here.
Not at all.
I think
the African
important.
spirit is actually very inclusive. Have you had any personal experiences other than them using the word? And I think they use the term affectionately the way I see it. Even in East Africa, like Somalia, where I'm originally from, they use the term for every like ethnic different term. For Asians, they have a nickname. For Caucasians, they have a nickname, but it's not derogatory. It's kind of like an identifier because it's just identifiers.
Oh, that's a huge difference then.
Yeah. But when we come from, and I'm from the United States, so when we come from an environment where race has been an issue in history and in the past, we're kind of conditioned to think in that way when we go to other places. But the gist of your experience in Africa has been very well because it shows in the light, like I said, that you have inside, the passion that you speak about, the differences that you want to see. If you didn't feel comfortable or receive love, you would not. And you're a feeler. I know you. You're like you're not only an intellectual, but you're also very aware of your surroundings. So I think it's that conflict. Because even me, being an African native, I still come here with certain ways of thinking from having been in the United States. And I have to remind myself sometimes when I get frustrated with Zambians, like, okay, they didn't grow up the same way I did, right? Mm. So there are days I'm like, oh, why don't they get it? So sometimes we have to take under consideration those differences, right? Mm-hmm. So,
and I think there is a deeper level of human connection beyond the skin. Mm-hmm. If you get there, I admire how my sister is doing business here. Mm-hmm. And I look at her, this feminine way in a way, but also strong, that has to get a lot of things done, and so friendly with people, so open, but also calling them to their integrity, which is what I think, don't call me ma'am, madam, boss, and then disrespect me.
It feels awkward.
Call me on my name and then keep up your word if you say something, which is just a basic level of integrity we all, have in all cultures.
But see, that's the thing with the whole social thing. And it took me 2 years to understand certain things. But for them, it's coming from a space of respect. If they call me madame or so, to me, like when you call someone madame, it's like someone who, like, and some of the gestures that they do, like the girls that help me, I'm like, no, you work for me. I don't owe you. You work for me. So there's certain things that to them when they say madame or these things, I had to learn that it's coming from a place of affection instead of saying, here we're used to calling each other by name. We're used to more like Miss Ayan or Miss Ina or something like that sounds. But to us, like madame or something like that kind of sounds a little off or strange to us. So sometimes it helps to kind of like assimilate. Like the first year was a little challenging because when we first came, COVID hit. So we couldn't really go anywhere. And so my only connection to Zambia and Zambian culture were the people that worked with me. And I would watch the Zambian channel and so forth. They would explain things to me. But I feel like just now, after 2 years, I'm like really understanding the culture and the ways. Like my background in the US, I don't know, maybe it's the same thing coming from Romania. Everything's chop, 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 right? Schedule is schedule. Machine. Yeah, schedule is schedule. I get frustrated when people don't keep time, when they don't show up, when they don't update me that they're not going to show up. So these things kind of create, now I realize, okay, it's easy breezy culture. It still bothers me and affects me, but they have an easy breezy culture, and the mindset is more what's important to their time first.
But
and then the person will understand later, I had an emergency. Whereas in the US, it's like, tell me that you're in an emergency so I don't have to sit around and wait, right? So it's these differences. So then I explain to the Zambians, when we come together and we communicate, the ones that I know, that this bothers me, and it bothers me because of this. It's not you, but maybe, so I don't get upset. If you need to cancel or you're running more than 20 minutes late, send me a text or call me. Or just
So
don't
it's
just
down to-
disappear.
It's down to respecting the personal relationship with integrity.
Right.
So we had lots of issues like that in Burundi with our team. So I would expect the people to come for a meeting, say, this is Sunday, make myself available, let's talk about our vision for the Peace Coalition and all that. And I wait the whole day, they don't show up till the evening. I'm like, okay, you know, and they were talking always, okay, the African time. And I thought, no, somebody there in Burundi said, in the back days, people, when they went to church, they didn't have watches, but if they respected the church, they were there 8 a.m. for the service.
Yeah.
So it's the way, I think it's very important because this culture is continually evolving, and it's up to every organization and business to set up its own culture that is not just the grinding machine, the terms of reference, you know, the schedule, but also the human connection and the negotiated agreements for everybody to happily contribute.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's just being in integrity with the relationship, respecting the relationship, and then making the agreements. I'm very different from you, okay? Back there in my country, that's how we do things. But I'm willing to engage and see how do you do things, and how can we together, back to this now, not me in a bossy situation saying I pay for the service and then I come with this demanding attitude. No. How can we make it work together for us? Because I want to have a good experience. I don't want to be the frustrated manager or colleague or whatever. And you want to have a good experience.
Yeah.
And I think when we're back to this context of together, we have a chance now to create something that can inspire other people.
Yeah.
I love cultural transformation. I think for me is on the table all the time.
Yeah.
Because we take for granted so many things. This is how things have been done since the times of my great-grandmother. Why? Because she was limited by, I don't know, that's happened there. But every one of us, which is what I think our personal responsibility comes in, I said, makes choices that support a culture of peace, to go back to the peace building, or a culture of opposition and division. Yeah. So we make those choices every day.
We do, and it's through the dialogue and the discussions of those differences that you can, sometimes you don't reach a resolution when conflict exists, but it's important to have that dialogue so you at least understand the position of the other person and what makes them tick, right? We can still disagree, but the important thing is you understand where I'm coming from, right, and where you're coming from. And I just want to clarify, my experiences is that it wasn't with everyone like that. I mean, with the people closest to me, I was experiencing that. But there have been many occasions where people were on time and honored their schedules, and so I don't want to have to, you know, box everyone in one box. But personally, in the beginning, that was my experiences. That was frustrating me a bit. But to them, I'm the one that is the outsider, right? So what I'm bringing to the table, like, why is she so stressed out about time? Like, it can be done. Like, relax. So in a way, I like that easy breezy way type of thinking. And in a way, it's kind of calmed me to take things a little bit more easier and to not stress out. Like, if something doesn't get done today, it's okay, I have tomorrow to get it done as well.
So what a beautiful contribution. This gentleness.
You're kind of forced to look at things in a different way. And again, but that doesn't happen until you actually discuss and have that dialogue, right?
Yes.
So I know before we close off, I'm gonna miss you. You're going back to Romania, but hopefully you'll be coming back to Zambia and teaching all these wonderful things. And we didn't have a chance to discuss all the wonderful intellectual volume that you have in you. But it would be nice for you to bring that here to Africa and for you to experience.
I definitely have books that I would love to share.
Before we close off, is there anything that you'd like to say to anyone in Romania or anywhere in East Africa or Eastern Europe or anywhere in the world? What is 2 or 3 phrases that you would like to say to encourage them to visit any country in Africa?
Oh, I thought you were going to put such a big pressure, like the one thing.
Just from your heart.
Yes.
Like you always speak. You always speak from your heart.
Just travel to the real places. Get to meet people for real, beyond functions and skin colors and food choices, because that will change inevitably who we are. Because actually we are not this distinct entity, we are a process. The more people we interact with, the more cultures we go to, which are completely different than our own, makes us ask questions about what we take for granted. And then I think this gives us a potential to meet not outside the colored vases we all have of our identities, our religions, and our practices, but we meet in that water that is the same in every vase, and we meet in our common humanity and beauty.
Yeah.
And our highest need after meeting all the basics is to really to contribute to one another's well-being and to enjoy this game. We're together. We embodied on this planet.
Yes.
What's the game? How can we make it a friendly one for each other?
Yeah.
I think the more contacts we make and actual travels and just pouring our hearts out to people and getting other people into our hearts, we might get another thinking, even at the international level. We might get beyond separations and so many divisions. And every one of us, I think, is responsible to do their own, out of the box thinking and connections to understand the world and just contribute.
So when you go back to Romania, you're going to go back to all your friends and your life there again and share all your 3-month experiences that you've had here. Do you think some of them will come and visit?
I'm going to do an African party with lots of Zambian
Take
culture,
them some chitenges and
lots of chitenges and
have them walk around with the basket on their head, see if they can do it.
Lots of giraffes. I love nonviolent communication, so giraffes everywhere. So yeah, why not? They get inspired. I think more and more young people will start saying, oh, why, instead of just doing, I love this practice, many Western Europeans and North Americans were doing it, just stop school for 1 year when you're old enough. Instead of going for another university and another degree, and so stop school, do a 1 year of world traveling.
Yeah.
It'll change everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. Your perspectives change when you start to travel and see other cultures, other people, new experiences, and then you go back home changed, right? Yeah.
And or you choose your home where what if our home calls us elsewhere.
Yeah.
If we grow roots in other places, you know, we.
The last one-on-one interview I had here was with an American friend of mine named David Snyder, and you can check out his video in the list of previous videos that I had. And he was so changed when he was here like 2-3 weeks. He was so changed that he went back. He got a tattoo of Africa on his arm.
What a visit can do.
Yeah,
so definitely get out there.
He
Don't
has
just read the news. The news are very distorted and limited. You need to go and experience the reality. Yes.
Absolutely.
And I've invited lots of Zambians to come now to Romania. I said, there's a place. I have a guest room. Just come.
I'm coming to Transylvania. I always hear about Transylvania.
That's
but without Dracula.
Without Dracula. We've got the necessary protection.
Ina, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to miss you. So hopefully I'll have an opportunity to come and visit Romania at some point, and we look forward to having you back.
I volunteered to be a brand ambassador for your amazing Nubian coffee.
Oh, thank you
I'm taking it to Romania.
Thank you so much. I'll give you some to go. And get Romanians to love it.
Yeah.
So I have a new country buying my coffee. God bless you. Thank you so much and have a safe trip.
Thank you.